Okay, how's this? Am I any better? Yeah, this is an unconnected mic. I'm hoping that this one is now working. Am I better? Sound is still not working. Whoa, okay, how's this? I'm back? Okay. Yes, sound. Okay. I'm so sorry about that. All right. It took a little while to figure out a couple of the technical issues that I've been having, but I think we're okay now. And so I am going to. I'm sorry, the pictures weren't working the way I wanted them to. That is unfortunate, but I'll see if I can get it working in the future. What I am going to do, however, is talk about a couple of. I posted to see if someone had questions for the live stream, and I'm going to answer those today. We have several comments. Okay, so here we go. This is the first one. The first question that we had on Patreon from Mark S. about anything. I open it up to Patreon supporters, anything they want to ask in the live stream. So here we go. For Mark S. It says, I'm never run for live stream due to time zones, but I'm a big fan. I've kept various snakes before, which have worked well with my lifestyle that involves time away. Can you recommend any insect or arthropod pets that can either be left alone for 2 to 3 weeks or can easily be set up to feed themselves? Great question, and I'm going to suggest a few. One possible idea would be to keep blue death feigning beetles. Now, these they're pretty popular already, and maybe not everyone knows because they do have big appetites. They can actually last a couple of weeks without food or water without much of a problem, and for that reason they've been one of the animals that they've sent to space because they knew that they could survive long enough to be able to do that. So that is a possibility. What I would suggest is not doing that very often, but if you know you need to leave for 2 weeks or something like that, make sure you feed and hydrate them very well before you leave, and then they should be fine in that situation. Millipedes are another one. I can see some of you, like Mr. Efin, Nasogaster, are mentioning that. Yeah, because they don't need a lot of ventilation typically, you can usually make sure that their substrate is nicely set up and nicely hydrated and leave the lid on, and whatever minimal ventilation you have is going to be sufficient, and they will be fine for a couple of weeks in general. And many isopods are the same way. Isopods that need a lot of ventilation, probably not as much, because they do need to have their damp area or their moist hide needs to be regulated and taken care of a little bit more often than that. So giant Spanish Porcellio, some of the Armadillidium, probably don't want to try it with those, but many of the other isopods could really do well in a situation like that. So isopods, millipedes, blue death feeding beetles, and one more I'm going to chime in with is the vinegaroon, if it is in dormancy. So generally in the winter, from approximately December till May-ish, and it varies a little bit, as long as you have the substrate properly taken care of, again, it needs to be moistened, you could probably do that, because they're not going to come up and be feeding or anything like that. They're going to be buried and pretty inactive, essentially ruminating during that period. So those are 4 different groups of invertebrates you could look into for a long-term vacation, like 2 weeks, without worrying about them a whole lot. So the Nicholas Galindo, the first species of the spider in the front of the first picture, that was Hogna carolinensis. That is a spider that's native to my area and many other parts of the United States. It is a type of wolf spider, and it was a big one, big enough that it would pretty much cover the palm of my hand. And I have occasionally seen that species in the wild, about that big. Definitely the biggest wolf spider, not the biggest spider, because we do have tarantulas here, and I saw a tarantula a year or 2 ago. I think it was 2 years ago, just up in the canyon near my house. That was much larger than that, but it's not too common to see the tarantulas around here. So anyway, back to Mark S. Hopefully that answered your question, gave you some ideas. And the chat seems to be a little bit laggy. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Oh, there is a video I really wanted to kind of show you if I can get it to work. One more video. This was actually pretty fantastic in my opinion. Yeah, I think I'm going to be able to get this to work. So let me see if I can show you really quickly, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, here we go. Okay, am I back? Okay, so hopefully you were able to see that video, and maybe you noticed that we had some powder orange isopods in the first part of the shot. That's all you could see, walking around in some gravel. And then as I panned out, you could see that there was a bumblebee flying around, and then maybe you saw that there were more bumblebees flying around. Then you saw that this was in a vivarium that had flowering plants in it that was lit by LED lights. What you couldn't see in the shot was that under that there was another chamber lit by red light that contained the queen of the bumblebees. So these bumblebees were living inside this vivarium with the powder blue isopods, and they had pollinating plants, and it was a really cool bioactive setup, one I've never seen anything like before. So I thought that was very, very cool. So let's see, coming back to questions. Mr. Efin, your millipedes were in the dirt for a long time, 7 to 8 months. What are they doing? Well, a lot of times, part of that time will be molting. But if your substrate is sufficiently rich, there's really not a lot of reason for them to come to the surface. And many types don't come to the surface all that often. So it's very likely they were molting during part of that time. But as long as your substrate is good, they just don't need to come up. So why do it from the millipede's point of view? And Newt Scamander, glad you joined in. Good to see you here. So yeah, it was a very unique vivarium. And Critters and More, I agree. The powder oranges, yeah, you can't really do them justice in a picture or a video. They're a very, very cool isopod, and I love the fact that they're very day active. As you can see, this was very brightly lit. It was during the middle of the day, and they were very, very active. So that was fun to see. They also had a dairy cow set up there, and I think I have video of that somewhere, but I don't want to mess with it too much because I'm having some technical difficulties today. So it was the queen there. The queen was there, yeah, in the chamber underneath. You couldn't see it in the shot, but we did have a chamber lit by red light that the queen was in. Really cool setup. And Supreme Gecko, Wally's asking, do I change out my substrate for my isopods at one time or one setup at a time? Good question. Usually what I've decided to do, I used to do all of them at one time, and that got to be impractical. When you have as many setups as I have, even fewer than I have actually, it started to get impractical when I had fewer. So now what I do is on the weekend, I'll try to do 2 or 3. I'll take an hour, half an hour, something like that, depending on how much time is available and how many I'm doing. And I will change out half to 3/4 of the substrate in those 2 or 3 setups and stick the label on them so I know when I did it, and then I'll do it again. And if for some reason I have extra time on another day, it's not often that I get that. And there are weekends when I don't get to it, and I'm really busy and I don't get to it. But like this past weekend, I think I did 3 or 4 setups where I changed out, half to 3/4 of the setup of the substrate. Sorry. And then because according to the rules of my permit, I have to freeze the substrate. I'll go through and get as many monkai and adults as I can out of the substrate that I removed first, obviously, but then I have to go freeze it. And so there's limits to what I can keep in my freezer too. So I have to freeze it for 3 days, and then take it out, and I can dispose of it. Yeah, I think that's a great question. What do you do, Wally? I'm curious. And CS has been seeing pretty big Armadillidium vulgaria with yellow markings all down their backs in Ohio. Do they normally retain yellow? Well, the younger ones, it's not uncommon for the younger ones to have yellow. And it's not uncommon for some of the adults to have a little bit of yellow, especially the females, on their backs. Not uncommon to have a little bit. It is very uncommon for the fully adult specimens to retain a lot of it. And I've been working on a strain with more yellow than normal for some years, and it's been really hard because, up to even into their reproductive age, when they're not fully sized, but they are, big enough to reproduce, you can see the colors, and then when they get to full size, some of them lose it, some of them don't. I think it was Oren McMonigal who said, if you look at their undersides and their legs when they're younger, if their legs are a dark color, they're probably not going to retain the color. But if the rest of their body is, if the legs under their body is a light color, they'll probably retain it. And so, and Nezogaster, what do you do with the extra remaining compost after changing it out? Good question. So I changed it out. I put it in the freezer. Once I've filtered it out, tried to get as many isopods out as I can. I put it in the freezer for 72 hours, and then I can put it in my garden. And that's what I do. I put it in the yard or the garden somewhere because it is good compost. And, Benjamin. A super chat. Excellent. And thank you. Let me know if you have a question you want me to address today, but I really appreciate the support. That's awesome. Let's see. So Slav Pepe says, quarantine changed out substrate for about 2 weeks. Sometimes I will do that too. If I have a chance to do that, I will let it sit for a week, 2 weeks, sometimes even some months if I have the option of doing that. If I have the space and whatnot, I will sometimes do that. I think that's ideal if you can do it. So Wally, you change out your substrate one isopod set at a time, and you have 2 setups going all the time. Yeah, that sounds familiar. And Nicholas Galindo, Darkling Beetle is going to be almost turn 1 year. Nice. That's awesome. So mystery trying to keep my millipede species together and they're making new species. What? Usually if you keep millipede species together, they're fine, but they do not hybridize very much. So, and glad to hear it, Benjamin. Am I saying that right? Benjamin? It's got a space in it and a capital, but hopefully I'm saying it right. I'm really glad to hear that I've been helping you with your isopods. That's awesome. That's what I'm here for, right? That's what I love to do, help people out. Cool. I'm glad to hear it. Seem to be doing it right. Well, at least I'm trying to, and that's something. But I'm really glad to hear it. One thing that I thought was really cool when I was at the place, they had some, like I was mentioning, they had dairy cows, and the dairy cows were in an enclosure where you could see under the cork bark, the way the cork bark was shaped. Cork bark kind of slanted up, and they were all under the cork bark. A lot of them were under the cork bark. You could see them all the time when I was at this butterfly biosphere place. This particular place is in a town called Lehi, Lehi, Utah, and it's kind of I don't want to say a theme park, but it's kind of there's a dinosaur museum there. There's a place called the Museum of Natural Curiosity, which is like a science museum. There are gardens. There's kind of a farm area. There are all kinds of things to visit there, and the butterfly biosphere is one of them. So very cool. So Supreme Gecko is asking about the snakes, how they're doing. Well, Mr. Skeletal, which is our corn snake, is in blue right now. Otherwise, he'd probably be around my neck right now. Very, very blue, and is going to be, I'm hoping by next week he'll be done shedding, but we'll see. He's also going on a diet because I measured him, every month. I tried to weigh him and so on. He was well over 500 grams and kind of chubby. And so you can kind of tell, some ways to tell if a snake is overweight is that in their backbone, depends on the species, but with like a corn snake, you want to see the backbone should stick up just a little bit. Not, you don't want to see ribs or anything like that, but should stick out. And instead it was kind of a concave area, so he definitely needs to go on a diet. And the little garter snakes are all doing well. 2 of them are in blue right now. 1 of them isn't. And I think the female is pregnant. I think she's going to be having some babies in a month or so. So I'm really excited about that. And hello, Crystals, Pets, and Plants. And Jordan, you made it to the stream. Excellent. Albatross Gaming. I have kept ants before. Collected some local ants years ago and kept them in a little homemade test tube style enclosure for a few years. They were very cool. Oh, Benjamin, you received 4 rubber ducky isopods. Awesome. I hope they're able to breed for you. I currently have what I think are 3 rubber duckies, the only ones that I have left, and hopefully I can get them breeding. But I hope you're able to get yours going. Newt's Commander, you have Cheez-Its? How do you say that? Is that a new kind of isopod I haven't heard about? Or is that crackers? Because they have a cracker brand here called Cheez-Its, something like that. But I don't know. I'm curious if that's a kind of isopod I haven't heard about. They're always coming up with new species of Cubaris isopods that are getting into the hobby. So, and oh yeah, Jordan, your duckies have been breeding like crazy. That's awesome. I wish mine would be. My red tigers are breeding quite a bit. They're doing well, but I can't get my duckies to breed. And theropod hunters, rubber duckies can take 8 months before they mate. From when they're born until they are old enough to mate. I'm not sure exactly. And Crystals, Pets, and Plants. How big will the bumblebee millipedes get? A little over 2 inches. Not a lot bigger than that. I think maybe 2 1/4 inches is about the biggest you'll get. And yeah, I think that would be kind of great. A weird but great name for an isopod. It'd be a really yellowy, orangey isopod. Porcilio magnificus, the Cheetos isopod. Awesome. That works perfectly. They're almost the color of those like spicy Cheetos, aren't they? Xiphos, it would be an awesome name for a Cubaris moth. There you go. Nicholas Galindo, I have a question. What's the care for a wolf spider? I have never actually kept a wolf spider. The only spiders I've really ever kept as pets are the Phidippus spiders, the jumping spiders like Phidippus audax, Phidippus regius. So I haven't done that before. And Albatross Gaming, do you have any advice for Pogona myrex? That's the harvester ant, isn't it? I'm pretty sure I recognize the name as a harvester ant, but I have never kept that. Well, I can't say I never kept them. I had an ant farm when I was a kid and tried to keep that species, but they're the kind of ant farm they would send you just workers in the mail and you wouldn't get a queen or anything, so it wasn't not really applicable information that I can help you with there, unfortunately. Ooh, golden trilobite isopod. That'd be a good name for the Porcilio expansus, the ones with the kind of yellowish skirts. And Crystals, Pets, and Plants. They're definitely smaller than the ivory millipede. I've got some of both too, and ivory millipedes are thicker and longer for sure. Ah, Newt, they're the white cheddar morph. Awesome. And hey, Matt M, nice to have you in the stream as well. Benjamin, I have great luck with the rusty red millipedes. That's for fish food. Nice. That's also known as the scarlet millipede, right? That's Trigoniolus corallinus, I think is the scientific name. I have kept that species as well. I collected some in Florida, and I had some for several years. They were cool. Unfortunately, I tried to keep them with my bumblebee millipedes, and at first, the scarlet millipedes were out competing the bumblebees, and then the bumblebees out competed the scarlets completely. So they didn't last, unfortunately. I should have moved them before that happened, but it did. So Nicholas, do you have the, are those leaf cutter ants you've got? Is there an isopod that could survive a warrior beetle? All isopods in this tank have been eaten. Good question. How humid is the enclosure? That's my first question, because that will help inform my my response to that. It's nice to know that isopods can serve as a feeder, but I don't necessarily want them all to be eaten. So if it's reasonably humid in there, I would put in something like a dwarf white isopod, because I kind of think they would not be as interested in eating them because they're so small and secretive and so on. If it's quite humid in the warrior beetle's enclosure and that's not working, I would try Florida Fast. And if it's not that humid in there, I would try Porcellonides pruinosus, because they're also pretty fast, also fast breeders, and they might stand a chance. So Nizogaster. Oh yeah, Rapashi morning wood is pretty good food for millipedes and isopods. They both really seem to like it. So that's a good one. Wow, it's already been half an hour. I'm sorry that the first part of the stream was kind of goofy, but I was trying to get this technology working and kind of ran out of time. I was testing it before the live stream, but had some other issues that kind of slowed me down. But I'll still go if people are here, if you have questions. Missed it every other day. Okay. And if there's always some of the substrate that stays fairly moist, then I would go with the, I'd try the dwarf whites in there and see how that goes. Oh, thank you, Wally. That is good to hear. I try. There's a lot I don't know, but let's see. Yeah, you know what? I can't even see the likes on this platform because I'm using my desktop for this one because I was trying to get the screen sharing going on. Apparently, I can't do that on my iPad, but I can see that there's 27 watching, but I can't see the likes. Interesting. Well, I would like to ask you all a couple of questions after I answer Nicholas's question. Okay. Well, sometimes that's what you got to do. You definitely have to remove isopods from enclosures once you get too many. So it's it's better to remove them before they get overcrowded. So you're going the right direction there. So we've got some guests coming up. I'm pretty excited. I'm going to try to do at least one guest every month on a live stream. Really excited about that. And we've got one set up for October. We've got one set up for September. And I would like to know what kind of guests you would like me to get. I have at least one other suggestion that I'm working on figuring out who I could do with. But if you have a specific topic you would like to get a guest for, please let me know. You can let me know right now. You can message me on Instagram. You can leave a comment at the end of this video, whatever you want to do. But I would love to know what kind of guests you want to see. Like if you say, well, I want a guest who's really into cockroaches, for example. Since I can't keep cockroaches, someone who's into cockroaches has a lot of experience with them and would be willing to talk to me about them and show us some of them on the stream. So that would be a perfect idea for a guest. So if you have a particular idea, we've already done velvet ants and people were really into that one, really liked it and wanted to see more of those. So I've been setting up guests and I want to do more of it. So if you have suggestions, let's see. So let's see. Oh, thank you, Nizogaster. Glad to hear that. Evolutionary biology and ecology. That's awesome. It's a good direction to go. So Newt, the black patch on the carapace of your blue death feigning beetle could be a couple of things. One could be from your hand when you touch it. If you have a little bit of natural oils or just moisture on your hand and you touch the back, that could definitely happen. Or if the beetle somehow got wet. If you put in some wet food and it touched that with its back or whatever, that could cause that issue. And generally, it's not a big issue because eventually the waxy secretion that they produce will cover it back up. It'll just take a little while. And generally, I notice it usually fixes it pretty fast, within a few days, but it kind of depends on humidity and so on. So just kind of watch it, and if it doesn't gradually start returning back to normal, then you might need to look at it again. But in generally, that's what happens. My new captive bred blue death fanning beetle has legs that are powder blue now, and parts of its body, other parts of its body, are starting to turn blue. Its back is a little bit bluish, but it's not quite there yet. But that you'll get that same thing happening. So Ants Canada would be awesome. I don't know how to contact him, but I will. I mean, I've seen some of his videos, so I don't know how to contact him effectively, but I'll see what I can do. That sounds like a cool idea. And Benjamin, thank you so much for signing up on Patreon. I love it. And thank you, young lad. I really appreciate that. So I have done one video about mantis with Peter at Bugs in Cyberspace. We did an orchid mantis one. And Supreme Gecko, a guest that keeps tarantulas, is coming next month, in fact. So in about a month from now, almost exactly, we're going to have a guest that keeps tarantulas. So snails for the live stream, there's a cool idea. Somebody who can keep snails that maybe we can't keep here in the US because there are a lot of snails that are illegal. Down the wormhole, hello. And I guess it keeps inverts in the UK, how the hobby is different overseas. Good idea. I would like to do it, and I have some people who would probably be interested in doing that, I think. Nicholas, how do you sign up for Patreon? Well, if you go to most of my videos and the recent videos within the last year or so, if you go to the end, not so much the live streams, but the other videos, at the end of the video, you'll see a little floating kind of a, what do you call it, an in screen that says Patreon. You just click on that and it'll open up the link, and that will lead you into how to sign up for Patreon. Basically, it's a way to donate a little bit of money to Aquariumex and help make it succeed. And that would be awesome. Maybe someone who specializes in bioactive tanks and plants that are safe for inverts. Another good idea. And that is fairly likely that it fell into the beetle jelly. They are kind of clumsy. That's very likely. So that may be all it is. Just watch it, and it should fix over time. Okay, so Albatross Gaming. Pale colored isopods, white with a pale orange or yellow line running down the middle of their backs. So there are quite a few pale colored isopods. There aren't that many. Well, I gotta say that there are some wild types that are like that, that are naturally like that. Kind of depends on how big they are and stuff like that. That might help us figure it out if they're really tiny or not. And so, Benjamin, you have a spiny flower mantis and a ghost mantis. Awesome. Oh, and I guess this is spoilers, but Wally's coming too. Wally is going to be on the channel as well. So I'm looking forward to that. He's actually the October guest. So Jordan, this is a great question. What kinds of isopods can we put in a Tegu enclosure? Let's see. What would I put with the Tegu enclosure for isopods? Well, since you have a baby Tegu, you have to be a little bit more careful, because I think if you put something like giant canyons in there, Tegu might very well want to munch on them. So, and then part of the other problem is, if you start with something small now and you want to replace it with something larger later, you might have to do an entire substrate redo, because if you keep, say, dwarf whites in there, which might work fine for now, and then you want to put something bigger in there later, the dwarf whites are going to outcompete whatever you add, most likely, unless you do an entire substrate redo. So what I would kind of tentatively suggest, a couple of options. One would be to try something like giant canyons in there, because they are such burrowers. They might do fine. and then they're likely to be able to keep up with things a little bit better than the dwarf whites once they're bigger, if the tegu doesn't eat them. If the tegu does eat them, then you might be forced to do something smaller like dwarf whites. But I would try giant canyons just to see how it goes first. Because I don't know how much digging he'd be into to try to catch them, and they're really good at burrowing. So that would be my suggestion. So down the wormhole, you could try some from a fire, but what I would do if you can't get any of the lump charcoal, get some aquarium charcoal. That would probably be the best thing, because you can get aquarium charcoal. It does cost more, but it provides a lot of surface area. So aquarium charcoal, not really charcoal, activated carbon, or horticultural charcoal. And you'll be able to get that any time of year because it's not a particularly seasonal product. So horticultural charcoal might be better than the aquarium activated carbon just because it'll probably be cheaper. And if you do a search, for example, horticultural charcoal orchids or something like that, you should be able to find it. And it's already broken up into fairly small pieces, so it's ready to go for you. You just need to add something larger, like a piece of cork bark or a couple pieces of cork bark on the top, to be able to harvest by knocking pieces together if that's the way you like to harvest. But that might be a good option for you. And it's my pleasure to have you, Wally. I'm excited about it. Okay, well, Albatross Gaming, that's interesting. Size of my thumbnail and they're white. Are they just wild collected? Because I can't think of any white ones that are wild collected that are that size. Mesogaster. You should also have bugs in cyberspace. I have had bugs in cyberspace on fairly recently in a collaboration Zoom video. It was just us, but not live. We made a video together, which was awesome, and we want to do it again. So I would love to have him on live. I think that's a good idea. And yeah, so Jordan, maybe you'll wait until he gets in a bigger enclosure. That might be the way to do it. So Xiphos, Scolopendra polymorpha. I have seen them under rocks too, and I think part of the deal is they have such a huge space. They're moving in and out from under rocks at various times, and so they're not going to encounter each other in a place where one of them can't run away. So I don't know. I know people have done communal setups with some of the other species like Rhycida longipes and one of the, I think it might be morsitans, Scolopendra morsitans, so I could be wrong. Maybe it's Dahana. I can't remember which one of those. I think it might be morsitans where they do communal setups. But yeah, Scolopendra polymorpha, kind of hard to do. I've heard of some people doing it in really large enclosures. Okay, well, Albatross Gaming, I'm surprised. If you want to send me a picture of some, I would love to see what I can figure out. And Supreme Gecko, I agree. It's a very good possibility that their digestive tract or other internal organs showing up, and through the pale, non-pigmented coloration. I'm just intrigued at what kind of species you have that's already looking like that. Okay, see you later, Nicholas. Thanks for joining in. All right. Well, we got some great suggestions. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to finish a couple more questions, and then we'll see you on Friday. I already have the video finished for Friday, but I've got some other exciting videos I'm going to be making. So I'm going to answer this question from Benjamin. And Nizogaster, the video is still there, so you can check it out. Benjamin says, what was your very first invertebrate pet? And I'm going through my head to try to figure out what that was. I think it might have been a mantis. I remember when I was about 10 or 11, I collected a couple of the Chinese mantis. There were a couple of them there. Yeah, and I think those were my first invertebrate pets, and they were very cool. I was really excited to find them, and I didn't really know exactly how to take care of them like I do now, but I tried, and they ate and so on, and I eventually released them when it got, it was starting to get cooler and so on. I released them, but they were cool. And I will look, Nicholas, at Ants Canada if he's interested in talking to me. I know he's got like 1 million subscribers, so we'll see. All right. Okay. Well, that should about do it for today. Thanks for joining in, everyone. Benjamin, thanks for the super chat. And thank you all for all your participation and interest and your patience as we had some issues today. So I'll catch you on Friday.